I wanted to get the Marine Mammal Center to come and talk to us about what to do, give us a little background on the Marine Mammal Center and about these mammals that we share the space with. So with that, I'd like to introduce Laura from the Marine Mammal Center.
I wonder if you might help me pull the screen back. I'm a little vertically challenged there. Thank you. Okay. If we're able to turn the lights off as well, that might help a little bit. Okay, all right, there we go, better. Well, good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see all of you here. My name's Laura Gill. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the Marine Mammal Center. So that means I have the pleasure of overseeing all of our visitor programs that we offer at our hospital in Sausalito. I support all of our fairs and outreach and guest speaking, which is why I'm here today. And I'm so honored to be here and talk a little bit more about the center, what we do, what to do if you encounter a seal or sea lion while you're swimming, and we'll have some space for questions at the end. So if you could hold those questions, we'll make sure there's time at the end of the presentation for those. Sound good? Yeah, sounds great. Great. Well, I'd love to start I'm curious, how many of you have actually been to the Marine Mammal Center before? Oh, wow, most of the room. That's fantastic. We actually just reopened back in June after a 2-year hiatus due to the pandemic. We did some renovations. We've really updated a lot of our signage and exhibits. So if you haven't been since June, I highly recommend visiting again if you get a chance. Of course, you can always see any of the patients that we're treating on site as well when you come to visit. So if you want to see or encounter seals and sea lions with a barrier, then you should come visit us at the Sausalito Hospital. All right, with that, next.
It's not
advancing for us. Oh, there we go. I'll just track us back a little bit.
There's a delay, I guess.
Yes, a little bit. Okay, thank you. All right. So for anyone that has not heard of the Marine Mammal Center before, we're a global leader in marine mammal health, science, and conservation. And what that means is we're advancing global ocean conservation through our work with marine mammals by doing rescue, rehabilitation, research, and the ultimate goal is release of those marine mammals back to the ocean to continue creating a healthy environment for them and for us. So at the Marine Mammal Center, we are a nonprofit, so we rely very heavily on generous donations, on volunteer support. We couldn't do any of our operations without the support of our volunteers and our community. So we're able to actually cover 600 miles of California coastline. That's as far north as Mendocino County and as far south as San Luis Obispo. So anytime there's a sick or injured marine mammal along that range in California, you can call our 24-hour hotline and let us know that there's an animal in need. Now, we've got approximately just over 100 staff, but like I said, we're really relying on volunteer support, so close to 1,300 volunteers. That's inclusive of our range here in California, as well as out in Hawaii on the Big Island. We have a hospital out there, and as well as operations on Maui, which we recently just expanded to. Now, I mentioned volunteers because, as was stated earlier, we are always looking for volunteers at the center. We have various roles like supporting the response. So if you want to get involved with actually doing the physical rescue of sick or injured marine mammals, you can join our team there. We're looking for support in our animal care team. So if you want hands-on experience working side by side with our veterinarians, it's a great way to get involved. And we're also looking for education volunteers. So if you would like to interact with our members of the public that come and visit the center, that's a volunteer opportunity as well. All right. So regardless of what happens with our patients, it all starts with our response and rescue. So I mentioned we have a 24-hour hotline. It's a little cut off here at the bottom, but it's easy to remember, 415-289-SEAL. So that SEAL part hopefully is easy to remember, and that's how you would call and report if you see a sick or injured marine mammal. At that point, we have highly trained, highly skilled volunteers that will dispatch to then actually perform that rescue. They've got equipment like personal protective equipment. We provide nice big shields as well. And we might use tools like nets or carriers to help capture and transport those animals that we do rescue. We also are working on field operations, special rescues out in the field. So we do a lot of work with whale disentanglement. So anytime there's a whale or a dolphin that's caught in fishing line or fishing net, we have a highly skilled team that will actually go out on the water, disentangle those animals, collect any of that netting, and bring it back to the center for our research purposes. In addition to that, we're also doing a lot of observational studies of the different whales and dolphins and porpoises that we see right here in San Francisco Bay, so we can better understand their migration patterns, where exactly in the bay they're going, to help prevent any negative interactions with things like ships or otherwise. So after our response and rescue, then comes the rehabilitation. Once an animal is picked up, we bring them into the hospital. As long as they're less than 500 or so pounds, kind of hard to fit a whale in our pools at the hospital there. But anything less than that we'll bring on site, and that's where the rehabilitation begins. So we have 5 professional marine mammal veterinarians on our staff that will help to do whatever's necessary to get that animal better. We are basically functioning like a human hospital, so anything that you would imagine you could get done for a person, whether that's a brain scan, an ultrasound, surgery, x-rays, we can do all of those diagnostic exams on our patients to then be able to provide that treatment. Often, treatment involves just a lot of rest for these animals and a lot of food. So we can actually go through 1,000 pounds of fish in just one day feeding our patients in our peak season, which tends to be the springtime. So once rehabilitation has ended, then comes the release. That's kind of the ultimate goal, is to get those marine mammals healthy again and return them back to the ocean. So this is a little bit hard to see, but some really chubby harbor seals that were rehabilitated and are waddling their way back to the ocean here. Now, along the way, we're doing our research. So every single marine mammal that comes through our door provides us a window into the health of the ocean and ultimately our health as well. So, for example, we were actually the first to discover cancer in California sea lions. They actually have the 2nd highest prevalent rate of cancer in any mammal. We were the first to do cataract eye surgery on an elephant seal to restore its vision. We were the first to do a root canal on a sea otter who had maybe one too many abalone. We are also innovating as we're learning more about these marine mammals. We're innovating that medicine and treatment plan. We do a lot of research as well on the impacts of things like harmful algae blooms. You might have been familiar earlier this year, we had quite a severe algae bloom in the Bay Area. So we're researching the impacts of that on marine mammals, which can inform public health. And then we're also researching things like diseases. I'll talk a lot today about several outbreaks that we've seen this year of diseases with California sea lions particularly. All right. And then what I get to spend my time doing is that educational component. We could keep rescuing, rehabilitating, releasing marine mammals all day long, but if we don't share the stories of those animals and how we're connected to it, we won't make as great of an impact as we could. So I have the honor of working on our education team. We do programs for youth as well. So if you're interested in joining more educational programs or learning more about those, feel free to come talk to me after the presentation. All right, so in our California range and out in Hawaii as well, we have some specific species that are typical, local to the area that we really focus on at the Marine Mammal Center. The first one in the top left corner there, anyone know what that is?
It's got ears.
Ah, ooh, very good. So I hear a couple thoughts. That one is the California sea lion, and I heard someone say it's got ears. So I'll talk about the differences in just a moment. The California sea lion is our most common patient at the Marine Mammal Center. We see them year-round with a peak in the summertime in particular. We'll see them for things like malnutrition. They're struggling to find food. We'll see them for things like entanglement. They get caught in fishing line or fishing net. We see them for things like injuries, broken bones. We see them for things like diseases, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. Our second most common patient, and I apologize that it's hard to see in the projector here, but that second one there is the northern elephant seal. Anyone heard or seen those before? A couple of us. The northern elephant seals are a really interesting species that we work with. We see them mostly in the springtime, and it's mostly the younger pups, but you might be familiar with elephant seals because they can be massive, up to 5,000 pounds. They develop a huge nose called a proboscis that looks like the trunk of an elephant, which is where they get that namesake from. Now, we see them really in only 3 spots in the world, and they all happen to be along our California coast, up at Point Reyes National Seashore, down at Año Nuevo near Santa Cruz, and further south by San Luis Obispo in San Simeon. So they're our second most common patient that we're typically rescuing for malnutrition and maternal separation. Most of the species here have a very specific breeding season, typically in the spring, which is why we have kind of a peak of patients at the center during that time. But unfortunately, what happens with some of those pups is that they get prematurely separated from their mom. So we're dealing with a lot of young, malnourished pups in the springtime. All right, what about this one?
Harbor seal.
That one's the harbor seal, very good. So the harbor seal is the only seal on the west coast with spots. So if it's not a Dalmatian swimming out in the water, it's gonna be a Pacific harbor seal. This one's our third most common patient. We're typically rescuing them at 1 or 2 days old. They're our youngest patient, very, very sensitive and can be resilient. But what we see happening a lot with them is that for a harbor seal pup, it's normal for their mom to leave them out on the beach while they go offshore to feed themselves, keeping a watchful eye on their pup, of course. But if there's a person that gets too close, or perhaps a dog off leash, if mom sees that near her pup, her instinct is actually to flee and abandon that pup. So really preventable if folks keep a nice safe distance, make sure to stay at least 50 feet away from those cute fuzzy pups. It can be very tempting, they are adorable, but it could lead to unintentional maternal separation, even at 1 or 2 days old for those poor guys. So thankfully, the ones that we hear about, they get a second chance at life, and we have a very high success rate with rehabilitating those harbor seal pups. This one here looks a bit like a furry Yoda. This one is the northern fur seal, and we also work with Guadalupe fur seals as well. And these ones really are only one of our more rare species at the center. They tend to be very pelagic, which means they spend a lot of time offshore swimming in the water, so much more rare to encounter a Guadalupe fur seal or northern fur seal. And then down here in the left corner, that's a Hawaiian monk seal. Where would you guess the Hawaiian monk seals are from? Hawaii, correct. So we don't actually treat them here in California, but I mentioned before that we do have a hospital out on the big island of Hawaii. So we're exclusively working with the endangered Hawaiian monk seal. This one is a very rare but special patient. There's only 1,500 Hawaiian monk seals alive today. And 30% of those that are alive today are due to conservation efforts from organizations like the Marine Mammal Center, NOAA, and other partners. But the reason that they're so endangered is the Hawaiian monk seal historically has had lots of breeding space, lots of beaches available to them in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. But as sea levels are rising, they're losing a lot of that habitat. They also encounter things like ocean trash, get entangled, and disease. So all of those factors are really playing into their status of being endangered. Okay, how about this one? Sea otter, yes. This one tends to be a fan favorite that we find. The sea otter is another one of our more rare species. We don't have a ton of them that we work with every year, but the center has rescued over 750 in our history since we opened in 1975. This one's hard to see, but this is a bottlenose dolphin. We do work with dolphins, porpoises, whales, as I had mentioned before. Here we've got a picture of a humpback whale. And that's more doing the field work out in the water with those animals as opposed to bringing them on site. All right. So I want to focus on the seals and sea lions today because that's more typical of what you would be encountering as you're swimming or enjoying activities out in this area. So a couple key differences to point out for you that hopefully will be helpful when you're identifying or trying to understand what exactly you're swimming with. We've got seals pictured here on the left versus a sea lion on the right. Now the way that I like to remember this is that sea lions are like lions in the jungle. They tend to have a brown color all over. It can be a light brown to a dark chocolatey brown. They have an ear flap, just like a lion in the jungle has external ear flaps. They've got a little ear flap. They also have long front flippers that they can actually walk or run on. I've chased after a sea lion before. They're quite quick, quicker than me. So they've got those long front flippers, brown color, and ears, just like a lion in the jungle, versus the seal is a sausage. No external ear flap. They have short, stubby little flippers, so they don't actually get up and walk on those flippers. They will do something called galumping, where they inchworm along the sand. And then the ones that we see, like the harbor seals right here, are going to be the ones that have spots. And that's how you'll know it's the harbor seal if it's got spots. So you've got sausages and lions, and that's how you'll be able to remember if you're trying to identify something that you're seeing or swimming with. Those are the key differences: ears, flippers, and color. Size can vary a lot as well. So I was going to try and share some pictures so you could get a better sense of what these species look like. So on the far left, I have two pictures. On the bottom is the harbor seal. The top is the northern elephant seal, which again you wouldn't be seeing typically too much around here. You've got sea lions. I have the California sea lion pictured here at the top, and occasionally we'll see stellar sea lions, but very rarely. And then here I have a picture of the northern fur seal and the Guadalupe fur seal.
Sorry?
No, not your fault.
Oh, it's giving the, there we go.
Ah, okay. So, thank you. So I wanted to focus on a couple of the stories of animals that we've rescued this past year from this area specifically. And the first one is named Alligator. If you're curious about how our patients get their names, it's actually through the reporting party. Whoever calls to report that there's a sick or injured marine mammal gets an opportunity to name that animal, so long as we haven't used that name before, which we've rescued over 24,000 animals, so we've got to get creative with the names sometimes. So Alligator was a juvenile male California sea lion. That means between 3 and 5 years old, so a younger sea lion. Was rescued from Chrissy Field, just over here in the parking lot. Whoa. And it was an interesting story because the reporting party called us and they weren't sure exactly what they were looking at first. Maybe thought it was a dog of sorts, but luckily they knew to call the Marine Mammal Center. So they called us, they let us know there's a seal or a sea lion in the parking lot, and we were able to dispatch a rescue team to check out the situation. As it turned out, Alligator was not in a common, typical place for a sea lion, so we did elect to rescue and bring Alligator back into our hospital. Once on site, we do an admin exam, just like when you go to the doctor. You get all your typical things like your weight checked, blood taken. We do the same thing with our patients as soon as they arrive on site. We'll do that admin exam. And through doing those diagnostic tests and that admin exam, we actually found that Alligator was malnourished, so underweight for the age that he was. Had some trauma, so some injuries along his flippers, abrasions. Not sure exactly what that came from, but unfortunately we kind of never know if an animal comes in with an injury exactly how it happened unless we saw it happen. It's still very treatable. And then that last one, we saw that alligator had leptospirosis. Has anyone heard of leptospirosis before? A couple of us. So next slide. So leptospirosis is a bacterial infection of the kidney. And if it sounds familiar, it's something that you vaccinate your dogs for. People also get vaccinated or affected by leptospirosis, millions of people over the world, especially if there's poor water quality. But leptospirosis, a bacterial infection, affects the kidneys, which is your organ that helps process water. So what we often see with these California sea lions that get leptospirosis is that they seem to be in abdominal pain. Sometimes they're kind of hunched over, they tuck their flippers in. And we also see that they're very dehydrated, they're thirsty, they're drinking ocean water, which of course is making them just more dehydrated. When normally a California sea lion or marine mammals get their water from their food. It's called metabolic water. So they just process that from the fish that they eat. Next slide. So the two distinct symptoms that we see are that drinking water, which is very unusual, and folding the flippers over. We call that the leptotuck because they're in abdominal pain. So luckily, this is treatable. It's a bacterial infection, so we treat with antibiotics, and we also provide a lot of subcutaneous fluids. Imagine like an IV bag that we help to rehydrate these animals after they've suffered from leptospirosis. It's about a 4 to 8 week recovery time for them to complete the antibiotics. Typically they're malnourished because they haven't been eating or been able to find their prey as easily as they would be if they were healthy. And they need lots of rest, of course. So we'll treat with antibiotics, rehydrate them. On site, if you visit us, you'll see a lot of them have little gray buckets of fresh water so that if they are drinking water, hopefully they're drinking at least fresh water. So thankfully, very treatable. So this is a picture of alligator after about 8 weeks who was successfully released back to the ocean. Now, this is wonderful for alligator and really important that the center is rehabilitating all these individual sea lions, but important to keep in mind that this disease occurs in cycles. So we see it every 3 to 5 years, kind of a large outbreak of something like leptospirosis. And if you're familiar with the sea lions out at Pier 39, or if you've ever seen them haul out along the shore, you'll notice that they tend to be in large colonies. They tend to be right on top of each other. They're very social animals. And unfortunately, leptospirosis is passed through bodily fluid like urine. So when we have these big colonies of sea lions, they're right on top of each other, inevitably they're urinating, it can be easily transferred between those animals. It can also be transferred between people and sea lions. It is a zoonotic disease, which means it can be transferred between the two species. I mentioned that because we're in an outbreak right now, so it's even more important to keep a safe distance from California sea lions and make sure that you're up on all of your vaccinations as well. Right. So again, remember to stay, if you see one on the sand, stay 50 feet away. If it looks like it's sick or tucked over or really thin, call the Marine Mammal Center, 415-289-SEAL. Since we are seeing this outbreak right now, we really appreciate the public is the eyes and the ears for us that can let us know that we have an animal that could need a rescue. Okay, next up is Hurley, and I wanted to share about Hurley because it was picked up from Pier 39 Marina just over here. Again, another male juvenile California sea lion, and was 161 pounds, which sounds like a lot, but for a 3-year-old sea lion should really be 300, 400 pounds at this point. They get up to 850 pounds as a full-grown adult for the males, so pretty malnourished as well. Also in treatment for leptospirosis. So you're gonna see all of the California sea lions that we are treating right now have that leptospirosis. So thankfully, we talked about the treatment plan. It's treatable. We were able to release Hurley. But I did want to talk about Pier 39 in particular. So as you're probably aware, we've got a colony of sea lions out at Pier 39, which historically, it wasn't until 1990 that the sea lions started coming up to Pier 39. And so previous to that, they would gather at Seal Rock, which is just on the other side of us out by this, the Cliff House, the former Cliff House restaurant. So it wasn't until 1989 when the Loma Prieta earthquake happened that it might not have been because of that earthquake, but it happened around that same time that the sea lions started swimming into Pier 39 and onto the docks here. So hard to see, but historically, the Pier 39 K dock used to be a place where we could actually park boats. There were boats. So in that picture, it's hard to see, but they slowly started taking over shortly in January. January 19th is kind of the official declared day that the sea lions started taking over at Pier 39. And it got to a point where the pier didn't know what to do. They were overwhelmed with the sea lions taking over, so they actually called the Marine Mammal Center. And we advised to let them be. If they're there, it's for a reason. And the pier actually decided to build special floating pontoons for the sea lions at that point and remove the boat docks. So from that point on, one sea lion told another sea lion, another sea lion, and it got to over 1,000 sea lions out on Pier 39 there on the docks. So now this is a really safe and interesting opportunity to be able to view wildlife without disturbing them. And we know that there's really 3 key reasons why they're coming to Pier 39 in this area in general. One is that they lack any predators here in the bay. Anyone know what their predators are? Sharks. Sharks, great white sharks, and there's another. Killer whales, orcas, yes. So we don't typically see large great white sharks in the bay here. Those juveniles come in on occasion, as we know. No orcas, it's far too shallow in the bay for those orcas to come through. So they're safe from their predators. We also know that the bay is really abundant in seafood for them. The bay is an estuary, it's brackish, mixture of fresh and salt water, which means there's a lot of really good plankton. That's why it's so murky out there when you're swimming. It's a lot of good, healthy plankton, which helps promote building up the food web. So lots of rockfish, smaller fish that these sea lions are feeding on in a relatively shallow bay. So they've got easy access to prey and a lack of predators. The pontoons are also really great for them because they don't have to worry about the tide coming in and going out and losing space on a rock like out at Seal Rock. They can just float there and be nice and lazy all day. So there are occasions where the sea lions disappear, and it's always a shock to the news and media when the sea lions disappear every year at the same time. So I wanted to clarify, and also important for you to know, as a swimmer, that there is a seasonality to when the sea lions are really prevalent in the area. So every year from mid-June to late August is the breeding season. We can advance to the next one there. And the California sea lions all breed down off of the Channel Islands off the coast of Santa Barbara. So you can see up here at the top, Santa Cruz, San Miguel, and Santa Rosa. Those are all the Channel Islands. So during those months, it's normal for the sea lions to vacate. The docks are empty because they're all breeding at the Channel Islands. Now, the other thing that's interesting about the sea lions that come through here is that they're all the males. Female California sea lions tend to stay at the Channel Islands raising their pups. Pups and mom will stay together from 9 to 10 months. They have a very tight bond for that basically first year after a pup is born. So female California sea lions don't venture too far up north. Occasionally we'll see them here, but more typically it's going to be males in this area. So there it is circled for you. So you know some of the ways to identify males from females is that the male's size, obviously when they're an adult, males are going to be really big. I mentioned 850 pounds. They're more of a deep chocolatey brown color. whereas females will only get up to 250 pounds or so, and they have a light blonde color. And then the little pups, hard to see here, are kind of more of a chocolatey, darker brown with their pup coat, and of course significantly smaller. Pups are born anywhere up to 30 pounds. So there's the male, there's a female, and there's the little pup. All right. I mentioned that mom and pup stay together for that whole first year, and female California sea lions have a pup every season. So they've got their hands full, and essentially after they give birth, around June 15 or so is when most of the females give birth to their pups. Only 2 weeks after that, they mate again, and then they start a second pregnancy or another pregnancy. Okay. So lastly, I've got Eek, who was a juvenile male California sea lion, was rescued right around Halloween. So, Eek, sea lion. So this one was actually rescued right here on Hyde Street, the boat docks. 126 pounds, again, for a juvenile male is pretty underweight, so this was malnourished California sea lion. Also had an abscess, which we typically see as a result from a bacterial infection. So anytime there's a bacterial infection, white blood cells rush to that area, which can cause tissue death, which means that a little hole with a pocket will form, and then pus and things will fill up in that area, creating an abscess. We actually see that very commonly with California sea lions, particularly juveniles. And then again, that leptospirosis, since we're having that outbreak this year. So Eek is on site with us right now, but I wanted to try and share a picture of what that sick animal looked like right here in this area. It was actually the law enforcement agency that gave us a call to say, hey, there's a sea lion on my dock. I can't get to my boat. So he was right here under the boat there on the floating dock. So all of this to say, why did I tell you about seasonality for California sea lions, or identifying sea lions versus harbor seals? All of this can help play into keeping you safe while you're out swimming in the area. So we talked about how marine mammals like California sea lions or harbor seals are not typically aggressive, but they could be if any number of these factors that we've talked about are playing into their situation. So if they are sick, if they have leptospirosis or other disease or injury, they could be aggressive. If they're having hormonal changes because it's around the breeding season and it's a territorial, aggressive juvenile male, that could also contribute to it. If they feel threatened at all, if you're too close, or if they've had frequent negative human interaction, all these factors could play into why they might be aggressive. But that is not the typical, the norm. There's usually something contributing to that. So we heard some great tips on how to stay safe when you're out there swimming. Swim with a partner. Make sure to scan the water before you enter as well, or have a partner that has their head up while you enjoy swimming. That was a great tactic.
Yay, Deidre.
So scan the water, stay alert and aware. If you see a seal or sea lion near you, try and maintain at least 50 feet of distance. Either swim back to shore or swim away from that animal. Do not approach it. For your safety, we know that there's a really high outbreak of leptospirosis right now, so really even more important to keep your distance. And remember to stay calm. If you're thrashing a lot as you're swimming back, that can draw attention. They're very curious. So try to stay calm, scan the water, have a partner look out for you.
So screaming doesn't help.
Unfortunately, no. Might draw them even closer to you. So if you do experience a bite, I'm curious here if you have an emergency kit where all of you know where. Great, that's a perfect first step to know where your emergency kit is. But if you, where is it?
We have like we have 6 of them here in the club. We have 6 of them here. So they're located in both the locker rooms. There's one here, there's one on the table outside the office, I think there's one in the bar area, and I don't know where the last one is. Maybe in the workroom for the rowers.
Okay, and it sounds like we'll also clarify that too after the talk as well. Thank you. So make sure you know where that emergency kit is. If you experience a bite, make sure to wash thoroughly with disinfectant. Seals and sea lions carry a lot of bacteria in their teeth, which is natural and healthy for them to have, but needs immediate treatment if you are bitten by a seal or sea lion. Even if you're just scraped, you should immediately seek medical attention and let your doctor know that it was a seal or sea lion, because that's not something that they are typically used to responding to, and there is a very specific antibiotic that they will probably provide to you, so make sure to mention that as well. Also, after all of the dust has settled, feel free to call the Marine Mammal Center. We have in the past elected to send out a team to put an animal on watch, which basically means we send out volunteers to scan the water to see if there's a sea lion that's popping back up over and over again, or if they come up onto the beach. We might even elect to relocate that animal or bring them to the hospital if they're sick. So definitely have the Marine Mammal Center's phone number as well. I've got little handouts to give everybody in a moment as well. All right, and then just a little bit on the Marine Mammal Center. So we are not a law enforcement agency. We actually are guided by government agencies like NOAA, and we have to operate very strictly under the permitting that we have. There are only about 40 organizations in the world that are allowed to do this rescue, hands-on rehabilitation of marine mammals, and the Marine Mammal Center is one of those organizations. So we have strict protocols and permitting that we have to adhere to. We also operate under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which states that it's illegal to harass or harm any marine mammals. That act went into place in 1972. And so always keep in mind to try and keep that safe distance of 50 feet as much as possible. All right, next slide. So to kind of recap, keep a safe distance, call our hotline. If you happen to see, like we did in the past with that repeated sea lion that was a repeated offender, if you can, snap some pictures and you can email those to rescue@tmmc.org. That will really help us with identification. And then also a quick description or initial observations that you see of that animal can be really, really helpful, even if we're just collecting data on what's typical for when these instances occur. So anything like length and size, you can compare it to a dog breed if that's helpful as a way to measure. The color, absolutely. We talked about how brown color, sea lion, spots, harbor seal, any visible or unique features or markings, and then where exactly you spotted it or what's around it. From there, if you can help us keep folks away at that 50 feet of distance, our volunteers will arrive in our beautiful bright red rescue trucks with our gear and our equipment to perform the rescue or do the assessment to see if that animal does need to be picked up. And then those next steps we talked about, they either come to the hospital for rehabilitation or it could be a case of a relocation as well. And if they did come to the hospital, then release is the ultimate goal. Okay, I went a little bit over time. I'm gonna hand out these little brochures that have all of our information on them. Thank you so much, Josh.